Okay, thank you. So welcome everybody to this presentation. So in this project, we are interested in the effect of a residence permit on the labor market attachment of foreign workers. And we use Liechtenstein and evidence from a migration lottery in Liechtenstein. If I say we, I mean my two co-authors and me, Buechel and Martin Huber, and we are all three from the University of Friburg in Switzerland. So why is this an interesting topic? Well, the economies of many countries rely on foreign workers, and there are different policies to attract foreign workers. So one would be to grant residence permits, which means that a foreign worker is allowed to come to a destination country, work there, and also reside there. However, there is a disadvantage that new residents may also generate costs. For example, they can claim unemployment benefits, and then there is a trade-off between the benefits and the costs. So an alternative policy would be to attract cross-border commuters, which basically means that the new foreign workers are allowed to come to the country, work there, but they are not allowed to reside there. They reside in another country. And we are interested in the research question, how important is the residence in a country for workers' integration into its labor market, especially if there is an alternative like cross-border commuting. And the problem here is if we would like to do a naive comparison between the outcomes of a foreign workers with and without a residence permit, then these analyses would be flagged by a selection bias. Therefore, what we need and what the solution would be is to find an experiment which assigns such residence permits at random. And we have found such a migration lottery, which is unique in Europe and takes place in Liechtenstein. So just to give you some facts about Liechtenstein, Liechtenstein is a quite wealthy microstate, and it's situated between Switzerland in the west and Austria in the east. And it covers around 160 square kilometers. So its main official language is German, and it has around 38,000 inhabitants and almost at the same size employees. This is because Liechtenstein has a very high demand, labor demand in foreign workers. And also what is very interesting is that residence permits are scarce. So there are a lot of cross-border commuting people, namely 56% of the employees are cross-border commuters. And as I've mentioned before, the GDP per employee is quite high, so it's around 192,000 euros per employee. So let me give you some information about the migration lottery. So the residence permits are scarce, and there was an agreement between the European Economic Area and Liechtenstein in 1999, and therefore Liechtenstein is allowed to limit its number of residence permits. However, 50% of these residence permits must be allocated by a lottery. In numbers, it means that at least 28 residence permits for working EEA citizens per year must be allocated by such a lottery. There are two lotteries per year. One takes place in spring and the other one in fall. And what is very important to keep in mind here for the later method is that every lottery consists of two independent steps, a pre-draw and also a final draw. What are the main conditions for the lottery? So the lottery applicant must have an EEA citizenship, which basically means that she must be from an EU country or Norway or Iceland, and she must have a working contract in Liechtenstein. So she needs not already to work there in Liechtenstein, but must hold a working contract. So this means in our sample, we will have previous cross-border commuters and also new foreign workers who have a working contract but have not started working in Liechtenstein. And the lottery participant must win the pre-draw and also the final draw to receive this residence permit. The residence permit itself is valid up to 5 years and can be extended afterwards. Also regarding family reunification, it is allowed that the family moves with the winner to Liechtenstein. What is the related literature here and also our contribution? So we contribute to the broad field of labor migration and in a more specific sense to the migration lottery literature. So there is some literature about migration from developing countries to developed countries, for example, from Tonga to New Zealand or from Bangladesh to Malaysia, and also from emerging economies to the US. And what we contribute now to this literature is that we have a look at the migrations from one developed country to another developed country, which compete for labor supply. And also what is new in our setting is that we have the option to do cross-border commuting. And despite of these alternatives, we find substantial effects. Regarding the hypothesis development, we have seen that a lot of employees are cross-border commuters, namely 56% of the total number of employees. And therefore, we thought about what could be the main advantage of cross-border commuters to move to Liechtenstein. And there's one main advantage, namely a foreign worker who lives in Liechtenstein pays a substantially lower tax amount than the same worker who would reside at the borders of Austria or Switzerland. Let me give you an example. So a single person with an income of 80,000 Swiss francs would pay 14% income tax in Switzerland, so in the adjacent part of Switzerland, the canton of St. Gallen. And this person would pay an even substantially higher tax amount in the adjacent part of Austria. In comparison to this, in Liechtenstein, the person would only pay 5% income tax. What also would be different is the commuting time. Maybe it would be more shorter or more convenient commute by using a bike instead of a car. But we have to put this argument into perspective. So a survey among cross-border commuters showed that the distances are already low for most commuters. So 59% of the cross-border commuters have stated that they have less than 30 minutes commute, and only 6% said that they have more than 1 hour of commuting time. So therefore, we argue the main motivation to move to Liechtenstein would be to pay lower taxes. Regarding the data and the subsample, we had 2 different data sources. The first one is the lottery data, which was provided by the Foreigners and Passport Office. So in this data set, we had information about all the lottery applicants from 2003 to 2019. We also know how often a person applied to the lottery. And in the second part of the data, so the second part of the data is provided by the Statistical Office, and it's about statistics on employment. So in this data set, we have the information about all people who were employed in Liechtenstein. So this means also cross-border commuters who work in Liechtenstein, but who do not live there. And we have matched these 2 data sets, and we also had to restrict our subsample. So the first restriction here is that we only use the first lottery participation of each person. So we have seen in the data that some people apply more often, so in 1 year and then in the next year and so on, and other people only apply for the first time, and that we do not have a problem with endogeneity. We have restricted it to the first lottery participation of each lottery applicant. Also, we needed to restrict our years because the two data sets so the lottery data were available from 2003 and the other data set started in 2005. So we adjusted also the years of the data. We then end up with 3,145 participants. From these, 350 participants win the pre-draw, so the first draw in the lottery. And also from the number of 3,145 participants, we have several outcome periods. And if we pool all the outcome periods, we end up with 20,009 observations. Below, I just want to show you the timeline when we have measured our variables. So the time-dependent covariates are measured 1 year prior to the first lottery participation of the person. So the first lottery participation takes place in t equals 0. Then 1 year later, we measure the treatment, which is moving to Liechtenstein. And again, 1 year later starts the outcome period. So here we measure whether a person works in Liechtenstein, how long he or she works there, and with which workload. So then let me say some words to the treatment and control group. So we are running an instrumental variable approach, which basically means that we identify the results for the subgroup of compliers. So people who would change their treatment status if they are assigned to the treatment. And in our case, this means treated persons are lottery participants who win the pre-draw and also move to Liechtenstein. And the control group consists of lottery participants who lose the pre-draw and who do not move to Liechtenstein. And again, for both groups, we just have a look at the first participation of each lottery participant. So on this slide, I just want to show you the descriptive statistics. We have here two different groups, namely people who have won the pre-draw. This means that is equal to 1, and people who have lost this pre-draw, then that is equal to 0. We see we have 350 people who win the pre-draw and around 2,800 who have lost the pre-draw at the first time. And then we also want to see whether our covariates are balanced. And if we have a look at female and the nationality dummies and also the age, we see that they are balanced. However, if we have a look at the first lottery participation, here we have year dummies, then we can see in the year 2008, there was a statistically significant difference between the mean of people who were assigned to the treatment and who were not assigned to the treatment. And this has to do with, in the year 2008, there was this financial crisis and a lot of more people applied to the lottery than normally. This means that has also an effect of the chances of winning to the lottery. And therefore, in our approach, we must condition on these year dummies. So let me just check the time. Okay. So regarding our method, we use a non-parametric instrumental variable approach. And as I've said, we condition on the year dummies, therefore on the covariates, we condition on covariates. So Y is simply our outcome variable, for example, whether a person works in Liechtenstein. X are the covariates, so the year dummies. The treatment is binary. whether a person lives in Liechtenstein 1 year after the first lottery participation. Z is whether a person wins the pre-draw, then this is equal to 1, or it's 0 if the person does not win the pre-draw. And then we also have here the instrument propensity score given X. This is just basically that we can condition on this year dummy. So this non-parametric instrumental variable approach identifies the effect for the subgroup of compliers. So we estimate here the local average treatment effect. This means in the numerator, we have basically the effect of winning the pre-draw. This is the stat on our outcome variable, like working in Liechtenstein. And in the denominator, we have the effect of the first stage. So whether the assignment has an effect on the treatment. And in order to condition on covariates, we just divide this here by the instrument propensity score given. And here I just would like to discuss the IV assumptions. Let me start with the conditional instrumental validity assumption here. The first line here basically means that the lottery is as good as randomly assigned, such there is no other factor which affects the lottery and the treatment and the outcome if we condition on this year dummy here. In the second line, this assumption says that our instrument Z must not have a direct effect on our outcome Y other than through D. In our setting, this would mean that winning or losing the lottery must not have a direct effect on working in Liechtenstein. So this assumption would be violated if a person already works in Liechtenstein as cross-border commuter and then takes part in the lottery, but this person loses the lottery, and because this person loses the lottery, she decides to quit her job in Liechtenstein. Then this assumption would be violated. And the second assumption is the conditional monotonicity assumption, which rules out the effects of defiers. Defiers in our setting would be people who would move to Liechtenstein if they do not win the lottery, and who would not move to Liechtenstein if they win the lottery. And this assumption holds by design in our context, because people who do not win the lottery are not allowed to move to Liechtenstein. The third assumption are the common support assumption, which says that for each value of our covariates, we find winners and losers of the lottery. And as we have seen in the descriptive statistics, this is the case. And the last assumption is the conditional first stage, such that the instrument that our winning the pre-draw or not winning the pre-draw must have an effect on the movement to Liechtenstein. And we will see whether this is the case in the empirical results table. So here I show you the pooled outcome periods, which mean we have pooled out all the outcome periods of the observations in our data set. So we end up with 20,009 observations. As I've mentioned before, we only have a look at the first participation of each lottery participant, and we do this analysis conditional on the year dummy. We have 3 outcomes here. The first one is employment. So this can be 0 or 1. 0 would mean that a person does not work in Liechtenstein. 1 means that a person works in the labor market in Liechtenstein. The activity level is measured in %. So here 0 would mean that a person does not work at all in Liechtenstein, and 100% means that this person works in a full-time employment in Liechtenstein. And we also have information about the years a person is employed in Liechtenstein. For the subgroup of compliers, we find that receiving a residence permit leads to an increase in the employment probability by 24 percentage points. So it's more likely that a person works in the labor market in Liechtenstein. And why is this not one? So why is it 24 percentage points? So in the control group, we also have people who are cross-border commuters, and therefore they also work in Liechtenstein without living there. Then the second outcome, the activity level. Here we see that people who get this residence permit, they work more. So they increase their activity level by 20 percentage points. And also people who get the residence permit at their first participation, they stay longer employed in Liechtenstein, namely 1.15 years. And all these three effects are highly statistically significant. We can also have a look at the first stage effect here. So this basically says that 36% of our subsample are compliers. And we see that the first stage is highly statistically significant, which means that the instrument is also relevant.
Sorry, Selina.
Yes.
Just a clarification question. Your variable years employed, do you have it from information about the work contract? Is it a long-term contract? Is it a short-term contract? Or is it effective year work there?
It's effectively because the employers have to report monthly whether the employees work there, and therefore it's effectively, it's not from a working contract.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. You're welcome. Okay, so let me just check the time. Perfect. Then we can also have a look at the intention to treat effect. So this is the effect of the instrument, so winning the pre-draw on our outcome variables. Here, if we have a look at the intention to treat effect, also non-compliers are part of this analysis. For the non-compliers, the effect is by definition 0. Therefore, all our effect size is decreased here in comparison to the effect of the late, but it's still statistically significant here. And since we have the observations of people over different years here, we cluster our standard errors by individual. Here in this table, we have only included the year dummies. Then in a robustness check, what I would like to show you here, we have also included further covariates. And what we see regarding the effects on the compliers is that the effect size stays rather the same, and it's still statistically significant, the effect. We have also done further robustness checks. For example, we test multiple hypotheses, and then there is this possible problem that we would get more significant effects than actually exist. And therefore, we have applied the Benjamin Hochberg procedure, and all the statistically significant effects we have found also survive this procedure here. So the significance looks quite robust in that way. And then we also had a look at the empirical results based on the second participation of the lottery participants. So this means for this specification, we have only included observations who participated the second time. Also here, we find that the results are qualitatively similar to our main results. And we also had a look at all third participations, and also there we find quite robust effects. So far, I have showed you the pooled effects over time. what we also can have a look at is the effects in specific periods. So what you can see here are the employment effects over the years in the slot. So on the x-axis, we have the years after the first lottery participation, starting in period 2 after the first lottery participation and ending in year 12. On the y-axis, we have the effect size for the effect of unemployment. These dots here represent the LATE, so the local average treatment effect. Then we have the bands here, which are the 95 confidence intervals. And this triangle here represents the counterfactual. So this means the mean potential outcome among compliers under non-treatment. So the mean of the compliers who do not win the lottery. And what we do see here is that the effect size is positive throughout the periods here. What we also can see is that the 95 confidence intervals get larger over time, which basically means that our effect is unprecisely estimated if we proceed in time. And this is because the decreasing number of observations. So in t equals 2, we have 3,145 observations, and the number of observations decreases over time, and therefore the confidence intervals increases and the effects are unprecisely estimated. But still, the effects are, do not fade out, so they are exist over the years. Also, I can show you these plots for the other two outcomes. So for the activity level, which is here on the left-hand side, we see also here a positive, mostly statistically significant effect at the 5% level. And also it's unprecisely estimated over time because of this decreasing number of observations. And also for the years employed, we find a positive effect over the periods, and also here unprecisely estimated over time. So we were also interested in the question, what drives our effects here? So in our sample, we have people who were cross-border prior to the first lottery participation, this is so to say the first group. And we have also people in our sample who have not worked before in Liechtenstein in the labor market, and this forms our second group, so new foreign workers. And our sample sizes consists half of people who have worked before in Liechtenstein, and the other half of the sample are new foreign workers in Liechtenstein. And we wanted to know, what drives our results here. In this plot, you see the effects only for the subgroup of new foreign workers. So this is half of our sample size here. And we see that the effect size increased a little bit, and it's still statistically significant. So for the new foreign workers, we see there is a statistically significant effect. And if we have a look now at the effects for people who have already worked in labor market in Liechtenstein prior to the first lottery participation, then we see here the effects are not statistically significant anymore. And we can conclude that our effects are driven by a new labor market entrance. And from a policy perspective, it would also be interesting to know whether a residence permit attracts new foreign workers into the labor market, or whether this residence permit also holds previous cross-border commuters into the market. So what we have done, we have again splitted our subsample, and we have done analysis over the period. Here in this left plot, you see the result for the new foreign workers. And what we see is shortly after the first lottery participation, we see a positive and statistically significant effect. So new foreign workers are attracted to the labor market in Liechtenstein. In comparison, if we compare this to slot B, so previous commuters, there is no statistically significant effect there, and also the effect size is around 0 shortly after the first lottery participation.
Sorry, Selina.
Yes.
Yeah, we have a question from Cynthia van der Werf. I'm sorry, I hope I'm not butchering your name. Who asked if you have information about the workers who won the lottery, and do you know if they change between firms or occupation after they won the lottery?
Whether they change their occupation afterwards? No, unfortunately, I do not have information whether they change their occupation afterwards or the firm.
Okay.
Yes, I had related remarks on that because maybe you find a little bit stagnated effect on employment and percent of activity over the year, but we can imagine that they just improve their career, they just improve their maybe the job place or something like that, but they stay employed anyway. But it could be an improving in quality of work over the years. Yeah, it should be really nice if you had somehow come about that.
I see this point. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, then I just conclude here the two plots. So we have seen a residence permit attracts new foreign workers, and for people who were cross-border commuters prior to their first lottery participation, we see a statistically significant effect in the medium run. So this policy also helps to hold previous cross-border commuters into the market. But also here we see that, the effects are unprecisely estimated over time because of this decreasing number of observations. So then I just would like to say one additional point here regarding the external validity. So we have seen that 56% of the employees are cross-border commuters in Liechtenstein, which basically means that the effect size would be larger in a country where the numbers or the share of cross-border commuters would be smaller, or cross-border commuting would not be less easily possible. And therefore, we argue that we provide a lower bound of the effect size here in the paper. Then I just would like to conclude the paper. We were interested in the effect of receiving a residence permit and also associated amenities like this tax reduction on employees' outcomes. What we have found is that a residence permit leads to an increase in employment probability in the country. Also, we find that the new residents increase their activity level. We find also that they stay longer in the labor force in this country. Our effects are robust. If we have a look at the effects over time, then we still see that there are substantial positive effects. However, they are imprecisely estimated due to the decreasing observation size, but the effects exist, so the effect does not fade out over time. And also, we have seen that the residence permits are effective for attracting new workers in the short run, so shortly after the first lottery participation. And we have seen that the residence permits are effective for keeping previously cross-border commuters in the longer run. And regarding the policy implication, we can say that a residence permit and these associated tax reductions increase the labor market integration, even if there is an alternative like cross-border commuting. thank you very much for your attention, and I'm very happy to take comments or questions.
Okay, thank you, Selina, for a very, very nice presentation. So now it's time for the Q&A. So I think we have one question from Julio Garber. So, okay, let me just unmute him. Okay, so Julio, I think you should be able to.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I don't know if I missed it, but first, thanks for the presentation. But what is the percentage of workers that actually won the lottery but did move to Liechtenstein?
There are these two steps in the lottery, and people who win their residence permit, so they win both stages and do not move to Liechtenstein, this is around 13%.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
Yeah, and I have similar question like in basic statistics. I think in the paper you said that Liechtenstein, like the government has to issue like 56 residence permits a year.
Yeah.
And so I guess this is an obligation by law, but is the number really higher than that?
It's normally this number, yeah.
Okay, so it doesn't go, it's really like the strict minimum.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, just to clarify a little bit the system, when you have the residence permit, it is valuable also for your family member?
Yeah,
Okay.
so the family members are allowed to come with you to Liechtenstein if you have the residence permit, yeah.
So if you have children and then you are going to Liechtenstein, maybe you have better job and maybe your children may have a better education. Just thinking of that to have a look of some other outcomes maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so of course, if the children comes with the father or the mother to Liechtenstein, then it might be the case that the school form differs, or also the school quality, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And at the inverse, if they are not coming, you will maybe enjoy your residence permits, but less longer than what you have planned before, or I don't know, or maybe you wish to come back and finally you are not using really your right to stay.
Yeah, that's true. This could be the case. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's also an interesting point to think about. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we have two additional questions. First from Cynthia. So, okay, Cynthia, I think you should be able to ask your questions. Can you unmute yourself? You can't. Okay. Yeah, I don't know why exactly. I think you should.
If you prefer, Cynthia, if you are not able to unmute, because actually you have the right, you
don't have a microphone.
You can write your question. And I allow Joel Machado to have the floor and ask the question.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks for the presentation and for the interesting paper. I have two comments / questions. So the first one is, you mentioned the benefit of moving to Liechtenstein in terms of taxes, so lower taxation. But is there like any cost? What would change for a commuter that moves, for example, from his current residence country to Liechtenstein? Is there a different, let's say, health system that he could attend to? Will there be changes in the unemployment rights or pensions rights? And maybe also a connected question, what are there additional costs? And here I'm in particular thinking about housing, which I can imagine might be more expensive in Liechtenstein. I'm trying to make the parallel to Luxembourg, which is the case I know a bit better. But yeah, so can you say something about this? Let's say, what's the other side of the coin if they do move to Liechtenstein, or is there even another side to the coin?
So thank you very much for your question. starting with the second point, the net disposable income. So if we also adjust for housing prices, which might be higher in Liechtenstein than, for example, in Austria, then the net disposable income is still higher in Liechtenstein than compared to Switzerland or to Austria. So therefore, there's still this incentive to move to Liechtenstein because of the lower tax rate.
Okay. And my second comment, or that's rather a question, was something I missed about the application to the lottery. Is there any precondition on applicants? So do they have had a previous work experience in Liechtenstein or any link to the country, or could I, for example, just apply and try to get a visa to Liechtenstein?
So if you have a working contract with a firm which is based in Liechtenstein and you have the European citizenship, so one of the European citizenship, or Norway or Iceland, then you could basically apply. So there are also other conditions, like you have to pay a fee, you have to fill out a form or something and hand it in until before the deadline expires, but these are the basic conditions. Okay,
so you do need a previous, let's say, employment relationship. So I'm asking because I'm trying to understand, to wrap my head around the results. So it actually means that thinking about the but so what's then, so a non-commuter for whom you find this, so you found this significant effect for non-commuters. So the 0.34. So what does that mean? The two different groups that you were studying. So if you go further back to the tables. Yeah. So exactly. So here you had the 0.11. Exactly. That's the average. The 0.2, and then so what was the definition then of this group who has the significant effect? Because I thought. Sorry.
Okay. So for example, you mean here for the effect on employment. So
I think that's the average, right?
Yeah. So that's the average. In our treatment group, we have people who get this residence permit and move to Liechtenstein. And in the control group, we have people who lose the lottery and do not move to Liechtenstein. However, the control group can consist of cross-border commuters. So therefore, also people in the control group can work in Liechtenstein because they are allowed to do, but they are not allowed to reside in Liechtenstein.
But and actually following what you said, they actually have had to work before in Liechtenstein. Otherwise, they couldn't apply to the.
Yes, so at least they need this working contract. Yeah.
Okay, and so it actually means that people in the control group are actually more likely to basically give up. Or let's say another interpretation of the result is that people in the control group are significantly more likely to give up their working relationships in the country compared to someone that wins the lottery and moves to the country.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you for your question.
Okay, so we have another question from Cynthia. So who is asking if other family members are allowed to work in Liechtenstein if the winner moves in Liechtenstein. So if it extends to a family. And so if you have information on the children of winners, if they end up working in Liechtenstein.
Okay. Yeah. If the family is allowed to move to Liechtenstein too, then yes, they also can work in Liechtenstein. Unfortunately, I do not have information about the children, whether they start working in Liechtenstein, but this would also be a very interesting outcome to have a look at. Yeah.
Okay. And so, just building on that, like you say that you focus mostly on those who participate only one time at the lottery. And do you know, like, if two people in the same family participate only once, then so technically you take them into account, even if like the household participated twice, right? So do you have information on like the maybe family ties between those who applied?
Yeah, so I mean, for example, if the father of a family and the mother of the family have a working contract in Liechtenstein, then of course both are eligible to participate in this lottery. That's true. But I do not have the information about whether this is the case or both parents apply to the lottery.
Okay.
And just to come back on Joel's first point, do you have some information about the job position? So before applying to the lottery, just to know if it is the richer that wants to go to Liechtenstein and enjoy the tax system and everything, or if it's, I don't know, median income person, or compared to their origin country.
Yeah, this would also be very interesting to know in which position someone works prior to the lottery, but unfortunately we also do not have information about this. Yeah.
All right. Always the problem of missing information.
Yeah.
So we have another question from Suso Bignandi, who asks if the right to reside automatically gives a work permit there, because in some European countries, the right to reside can be different from the right to work. But I guess here you can only apply if you have already a work contract, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Okay, so I don't see any question. Joel, you still have your hand raised, so I don't know if it's for another question.
Yes, I had a small curiosity question out of, if you allow me, just to give that the data was mentioned. So I was just wondering, a non-resident that is non-employed, so how do you identify this person? Is it the absence of social security data or employment data, or is there? Because I guess the country loses track of people that no longer have a let's say, working relationship and no residence relationship, right?
Yeah. So just give me 1 second. Non-resident who do not work in Liechtenstein.
Control
right?
group that would stop working, basically. I think that's my point. Yeah.
Yeah. So we do not have data, for example, if this person starts working in another country or something. So if this person stops working in Liechtenstein, then of course the employment in Liechtenstein is 0 in our data, but we do not have information.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but that's how you identify. Just see that this non-resident basically no longer appears as working in the country. That's how you can identify. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any questions. So, and I don't have any more myself. So I guess, if we don't have any more questions from participants, well, maybe we can conclude here. And if some people want to talk about that more, we can stay a bit after Elsa concludes to discuss that. Okay.
All right, so thank you again, Selina, for your presentation. Just quickly announcing the next junior seminar. So it will be in 2 weeks, and Jou Padema will present us a work on mobile internet access and the desire to emigrate. As today, you can register as panelist if you want to interact more closely with our speaker. But if you do so, you are invited to read the paper and to connect 5 minutes prior to the start of the seminar. Just to remind that you can visit our website at any time, and you can see the upcoming presentation, and feel free to give us your impression, filling the feedback form. And we are always open to submissions. So if you want to present during this seminar, you can send an email to our Gmail address, junioreconmig@gmail.com. Thank you for your participation today, and see you next time. Maybe we could stay a little bit, Selina?
Yes, of course.
Great. I'm just looking at the participant.
Yeah, you can just stop the recording, I think.
Oh yeah, we stopped the recording, right.